With the fragile ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran set to expire this week, President Trump told Bloomberg Vice President JD Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner will travel to Islamabad very soon for peace talks. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us live now from the White House. So, Natalie, Iran says that they are not going to attend the talks. So how's this going to play out?
Well, and what's notable, Reed, here at the White House is some of kind of the changing statements we've heard, because earlier today, President Trump had told the New York Post that the vice president was on his way. And then in a separate phone call with another news organization, he said that the vice president would be leaving soon or later Monday. And we still have a lot of questions about when exactly is he going to get on the plane. We do know that the U.S. delegation will be Vice President Vance, in addition to Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, so the same group that negotiated that one weekend, the last weekend, when we had those 20-plus hours of talks that did not yield a final deal. And, you know, we know Iran continues to say that it has not made a final decision about whether to attend, and that there continues to be mistrust, according to Iranian officials, and also claims that the U.S. demands are excessive. We know that a key sticking point here that's been expressed over the past 48 hours or so continues to be the issue of enriched uranium. President Trump saying on Friday, telling outlets including CBS News, that Iran had agreed to stop enriching uranium forever, and also to help the United States obtain the currently buried enriched uranium in Iran. Iran later that day disputing that and saying that enrichment of uranium is sacred to Iran, and that it will not be transferred anywhere, Reed.
Okay, so people in Iran literally are under the gun. And President Trump, we know this, he's doubling down on threats against Iranian infrastructure. We're talking about bridges. We're talking about the use of electrical plants. Is there concern that such strikes, or even threat of strikes like that, would cause the U.S. to lose favor? Because I'm remembering thousands of people in the streets cheering for the U.S. and Israel to intervene for regime change. But if the lights go out, if they can't cross bridges, could that change the situation in Iran? Is the White House talking and thinking about that?
You know, when this threat was first issued by the president ahead of the peace talks that occurred last week, I had asked an Iran expert about that very question, and he described essentially what you're saying, that there was such an optimism when this all started, that the regime would quickly fall, it would be a quick military victory, and then, you know, weeks later they're seeing something different with what was continued bombings and now threats to infrastructure. And the concern by this Iran expert with ties to the region was that the people of Iran might view this as, you know, a war against them and not against just the regime. Now, I've also talked to Iranian Americans who have, you know, expressed skepticism that anything can be done in terms of a successful negotiation with the current regime still in place, or hardliners who still, you know, remain making decisions. So, you know, there's a deep concern. They're watching these images, worried about family members, trying to get through to family members, but also wondering, you know, what's next here, and will this truly lead to anything fruitful, given that these deep red lines still remain?
Natalie Brand watching it all from the White House on a Monday. Thank you so much, friend. Good to see you.